Okay, everyone. Wow, everyone came back from lunch. That is always a nice experience. Sometimes you have to drag people away because I know how good the food is here. Anyway, let's move on to the Payment Technology Forum. Let me introduce our guests first. We are joined by Zeynep Sayin, Head of Visa Direct Partnerships at Visa. We're joined by Divya Bhardwaj, COO at Uber Payments, Alistair Chaytor, Global Payments Director at Burberry, and Jonny Kier, Head of International Payments Technology at NatWest. A warm welcome for our panel, please. Right, you all know the drill by now. We like to get 30 seconds from each of our speakers just on them, who they are and what they're doing here, which seems like a nice way to start. I'll start at the far end with you, Jonny, if I can. If we can just do 30 seconds on you, please.
Yeah, of course. So Jonny Kier, I work for NatWest, where I head up our international payments tech. That's two things primarily. One of them is all around resilience. So that is making sure that our systems are up and available to customers whenever they want them, so that millions of payments that come through our systems every day do what they're supposed to do. And then the other aspect is all about transformation. So that is the constant cycle of uplifting our systems and our technology so that we're set up well for tomorrow. That's what I'm all about.
Thank you very much. Alistair.
Hi everybody, Alistair Chaytor, Global Payments Director at Burberry. Been in role for about 18 months. I'm responsible for end-to-end payment operations across our global acquiring, aside from China, but everywhere else aside from that. So anything front-end, back-end, working closely with product and development teams. Prior to that, I was at TripAdvisor for best part of 10 years, working across their marketplace platforms.
Thank you. Divya.
Hi everyone, my name is Divya. I am currently the CEO of Uber Payments UK, where I manage the first line operations for our UK payments business, meaning that all the payments volume that go through the Uber platform on the mobility and delivery side are handled by Uber Payments UK, and I manage the first line operations for that. Prior to Uber, I'd been in payments for Fintech for the last 15, 16 years, working across various spectrum of payments, including acquirers, marketplaces, gateways, and payment processors. So, thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Zeynep.
My name is Zeynep Sayin. I am the head of Visa Direct Partnership team at Visa. I'm managing our relationship with our partners enabling Visa Direct, so meaning acquirers, processors, ERP platforms, ISVs, payment gateways, like these type of clients. And prior to Visa, I was mainly on the consultancy space.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get into things. And where I'd like to start first is revolving innovation in payments. And Jonny, if I could start with you on this. Well, I'd love to know if you could put your finger on some of the biggest improvements you've seen in payment systems just in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I would say that speaking on behalf of NatWest as a big and very old bank, that when you've got 200-300 years of history, there's normally a few bodies buried there in terms of technical complexity.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, very important point. So I think one of the things that's kicked on in the last couple of years that it hasn't done previously is we've actually addressed the root cause of some of those issues. When you've got a very big organization that's grown organically over a long period of time and inorganically as well, it creates a lot of complexity. And the approach that historically has been taken is a sticky plaster here, a tactical workaround there, something in ops over here. And I think that the beauty for me of the last couple of years is that customer expectations combined with the reg agenda has meant that you can't put a sticky plaster over things. There is no patch to make your systems real time and up 24/7. You actually have to start to address the fundamentals of your architecture. So as part of that, we've put a lot of focus on things that you would expect. So kind of really going down to basics in terms of a modular architecture, API enabled, so that we can get rid of some of the complexity. Payments is the ultimate piggy in the middle. Everyone needs us. Everyone wants to plug into us. So if we are big and ugly and monolithic, that's a very difficult thing to do effectively. So big focus on that, big focus on real time as well. I'm sure we'll cover that slightly later. But not just for payment processing, also for data. So making sure that if you want data out of our systems, you don't join a very long queue and get the view of what it looked like a couple of days ago. You can actually tap into it in real time. Final thing I would probably touch on is the resilience side of things. So we've seen, probably in the last few years, we've had a few what we call 1 in 100 year events whereby very unlikely things happen, they cause problems, and as a result, we are absolutely obsessed on our availability, our resilience, and we're using various tools like public clouds to manage that more effectively. We're on a journey still, right? There's still a lot more to do, but I think the last couple of years we've got real traction and oomph behind it in a way that we haven't previously.
Yeah, if we could stop with the 1 in 100 years events just for a year or two, that'd be lovely, just to let us all catch up. Alistair, your thoughts?
Yeah, so again, kind of speaking on behalf of Burberry, about 80% of our traffic that comes through is retail, as you can imagine, kind of bricks and mortar. So there is a, as you called about there, Jonny, a kind of monolithic piece as well, that things move a lot more slowly in that environment than they do on the digital environment. So only having been in role for about 18 months, some of the biggest changes that we have seen are on the digital side. We've started turning our business to be digital first. If you think around how we kind of acquire and retain customers, often people are coming for their first time purchase at Burberry, and it may be a lower cost item that is online, and then we try and bring them into our sphere. So yes, we will have high net worth individuals that are in stores, but particularly the digital transformation and re-platforming of that digital business and how we kind of think around that omni-channel flows between customer acquisition in one channel and then retention through another channel has been pretty big for us over the last couple of years. So that's certainly been one of the bigger pieces that we've seen. I think in terms of thinking back, I guess, only having been in role for about 18 months and thinking of other businesses, when I was back at TripAdvisor, we had some really kind of big changes around the regulatory landscape that we were operating in. So some of the bigger kind of marketplace businesses that we worked in were kind of US-centric, Australian-centric, and not necessarily subject to payment regulations that would be across PSD2, whether that be licensing in the EU or licensing in the UK. So there was quite a big, and again, Divya, you may talk to this a lot better than I have, at Uber as a marketplace platform. But again, that money in, money out, thinking about how the regulatory environment will dictate things like safeguarding and how funds are held, how funds are dispersed, who owns the fund, who has control of the funds. That side of things is quite interesting on the tech side in terms of technology is increasing, but regulation doesn't necessarily increase as fast as the technological movements do. So it's right-sizing your business kind of operationally to pull things together there.
I'm deeply tempted to go off on a tangent finding out about the different approach to the two different types of customers, but I won't, because then it'll just turn into a fireside with spectators. So we won't do that. Divya, your thoughts on those biggest improvements in the last couple of years?
So I think payments is quite critical to the customer journey on the Uber platform. If you take payments out, then it's a really poor experience. It lends to poor trust experience as well for consumers or for users of the Uber platform. We are a two-sided marketplace. Someone is paying and someone has to be paid, and we are in the middle. And so there are lots of stakeholders, and we have to manage those stakeholders effectively. And that's there's always room for improvement. There's always iterations and reiterations that we have to continuously monitor and make. In terms of the improvements or things that we've focused on as Uber Payments in the last few years, probably the biggest would be enabling real-time payments for the earners. So, the drivers not having to wait a whole week, for example, to get their payments through the ACH into their bank account. That is a huge push. We have enabled that in many markets, but how do you do this harmoniously across all the markets is a challenge because of different regulatory requirements, different dependencies on our partners, on domestic real-time payment schemes, for example, which are not integrated fully with each other at the moment. So I think that has been a key focus. The second focus is also enabling as many payment methods as possible and payout methods as possible for both the payers and the recipients or the earners. That again is a continuous focus area for us. For example, in the UK, we have actually enabled cash payments outside of London on Uber. So a lot of people don't want to use cards. They just want to, for a taxi ride, they just want to pay whatever, £10 for a short. So, it's like listening to what the consumer wants and then enabling it in a very localized fashion in the market. So that has been another focus area for us as well.
So that's a lot about flexibility. That's also fascinating. Also a conversation I could have separately, but I'm not going to. Zeynep, your thoughts on those improvements?
Okay, we are a payment company, so it is like our core business, and we are working with our clients to meet their demands and expectation, and everything that they mention is basically our daily job. And many people say that there has been a lot of improvements and changes in the payment ecosystem for the last 5 years, and it's much more than for the last 15 years. So they call it even like an evolution or a revolution. So, and Visa is adapting to all of these changes. So one of the product innovation that we recently launched for the last couple of years is Visa Plus. So basically it's to make the payment experience even more seamless and invisible. So Visa Plus is the alliance directory service of Visa. Basically, you are able to send your funds to an email number or a phone number to an alliance that you choose. And so this is something that actually we are familiar, because within the existing platforms, we are able to do it. But what Visa provides is interoperability. And I think this is something that we are working towards, like interoperability across everything. And you can do it across domestic payments, cross-border payments, like basically any payment types that you want. And right now it's mainly used for peer-to-peer payments, but it's not necessarily needs to be peer-to-peer. So you can use it for fund disbursement use case. As a gamer company, you can do, you can pay payments to the gamers. As an investment company, you can send fund disbursements to your customers. So you name it. I'm sure that the audience will find better examples than I do right now. But you can use it for anything, like any payment types that you want. And I believe like this is one of the latest innovation. I'm not talking about stable coins, which we announced last week, but obviously we are also investing on that space as well.
There, again, so much we could dig into, but we'll move on to a wider question on new technology and how open you need to be to new and emerging technologies to stay current, to stay ahead, to stay sharp. Alistair, if I could start with you, your thoughts. Why is it important to be open in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, being open, I think it's fair to say that the pace of technology has never moved faster than how it has now, particularly in the payment space. I think it's worthwhile giving the perspective from Burberry. I don't know how many people are kind of merchant facing or merchant based here, but ultimately Burberry as a particular product is about the product. It's about the customer service. So you can probably tell from what I'm wearing, I'm not donned in any in any Burberry, more M&S up here than
I was not going to agree
than anything else. But in terms of how we operate in payments, I wouldn't necessarily say that we're at the, I shouldn't really be saying this, but at the vanguard of our business. Ultimately, our business is driven by product, it's driven by customer service. I think what's important for us to be aware of is where we can complement and assist those flows or those operational pieces that we have in terms of the buying and the selling experience. So I guess to pull an example, if we have a customer that we've seen before, we're able to use tokenization on the basis of customers may have in-house appointments. So they'll call up a store, they'll say, hey, I like the new collection. There'll be a client advisor that will go out to somebody's house, that will take all of the goods with them. Now, at that point in time, if the client advisor's walking around with a PDQ machine as well, or a PED machine to take the payment, it's not the most seamless of experiences. So using tokenization there and building that into our inventory stack as well means that we're able to, have the goods taken away. Which ones would you like? Which ones do you want to take back? They keep the ones that they like. We remotely take the payment. That's how we kind of think about seamless experiences from a customer perspective. So it's not necessarily to say that we're at the vanguard of that technology and say, hey, do you want to pay in stablecoin or something like that? But we think about how we can seamlessly kind of morph into the customer experience as they go through.
Yeah, I clearly shop at the wrong places. The thought of someone coming to my house with a new collection sounds kind of fun. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Let's keep passing it down the panel. Divya, your thoughts on there about being open? It's something you just touched on in the different types and the flexibility.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and ultimately it depends upon what the customer wants. And the reality of the situation is that the consumers are becoming more and more tech-centric, tech-focused. And from a payments experience, what the users want is speed, reliability. That's what they want. And in order to enable that, you will need to enable new technologies. On payment method side, we know that the world is moving towards more and more usage of crypto, for example, or stable coins. That's what consumers want in certain markets. So it's obvious that you would want to enable it. But how you go about it, what your organizational design is, what the back-end tech stack is, those are all factors that will play into how you actually enable that. So definitely, I think you have to be open, but there are lots of challenges, not just on the operational side or the tech side, it's also the regulatory side, which we mentioned earlier. Whether the regulation, how far does the regulation allow us to enable new technologies is also a question.
Zeynep, the same question, and I guess it's imperative for you to be at the forefront of any emerging tech. If you're not, someone's not doing their job right. Your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, as Visa, we need to stay ahead of the innovation, and we need to be on the forefront of the innovation so that we can provide these services to our clients. So it's not just about like checking the trends and being aware of the trends, but actually creating those trends is our job. So when I was preparing for this question, actually, I also realized that Visa is one of the first company who use AI technologies. And so we are talking about AI recently, but Visa is using it for the last 30 years. And it is one of the first networks globally who use AI to secure transactions on risk and fraud management. And last year alone, we facilitated the prevention of the fraud of $27 billion. By using AI. And we invested $3 billion into this technology, and we will continue investing. So obviously, like AI is one thing, and it's very trendy these days. But again, like we are at the forefront of innovation for payments and to meet the demand of our clients.
Absolutely, Jonny, your thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose openness to new technology is not about keeping up for me. It's about surviving. I think realistically, you've got to be open or you will fail as a business. In our industry, so in financial services, I'd kind of split that into two different kinds of pressures from a technology standpoint. One of them is the big long-term systemic changes. So AI could drive a wave of change that fundamentally changes what banks do. Similarly, central bank digital currencies is another one that could really, really change some of the driving forces behind the way the economy works. So you have these big macro themes and technologies that could change things. But you've also got a lot of technical pressures in the here and now. So you touched on fraud. The reality is the bad guys are really technically savvy, right? So we're under attack as a large organization every single day, every minute of every single day. And unless we're staying on the front foot of technology to combat that threat, we will lose. That's the reality of it. I think sometimes people downplay how sophisticated that criminal enterprise is. You know, ransomware as a service is a thing. The bad guys have AI, so therefore it's our prerogative to stay on the front foot to fight off some of those threats. The one kind of cautionary point I would make though is that whenever we're looking at new technology, we never start with the technology, right? Always start with the customer, start with the reg outcome, and then work your way back to the technology. If you do it the other way around, it's tail wagging dog, and you don't get good value from your investment. So, you must be open to survive. I don't see any other option.
I do like the way you phrase that. That's absolutely on point. I'm going to move on to what is always one of my favourite questions. Yes, I should get out more, and that's about implementation, because you can have the most wonderful new set of toys, incredible software, incredible platform. But if it's not integrated into the organisation properly, you may as well still be filling out spreadsheets and having a lovely time. So implementation for me is key. So if I could start with you, Divya, on this, about how you go about implementing any new payment technology into your wider tech stack. How do you go about it? What lessons have you learned through your career? Talk me through it.
I think ultimately it's about what the consumer wants, what does the user, what is the problem that you're solving for. So just like there's so many new technologies out there, are all of them right for your business? That's the first question to ask. What is the value proposition of this particular new technology? How is that going to serve the customer demand or customer need? That is the biggest question. If that is solved, then you can get the organizational buy-in for implementing that new technology. Like for us, it's slightly different because we are part of a global technology company. So in that, we tap into those resources as well. So it's not just a payments decision. It has to the broader buy-in has to be there. Ask the right questions within your team, get the value proposition finalized, then get the organizational buy-in, and then go about implementing that solution. And obviously look at it from different perspectives in terms of what is the medium-term goal here and what is the long-term vision here as well. So sometimes you go in with the medium-term goal without looking at what the broader picture is, what the long-term plan for this particular new technology that you're implementing is. So it's important to look at it from that perspective as well.
Thank you. Zeynep.
It's more or less the same, to be honest. Again, we are checking. I think I'll repeat exactly the same things that Divya said. So maybe you can move on to the other panelists because
That's fine. Jonny.
I'm gonna say something deeply profound here. Good planning.
That's the most profound thing I've ever heard.
I know it's great insight here on the stage. I mean, but so often we're cornered into bad decisions around customer proposition or technology because of poor planning, right? And then you're in a reactive mode. You're on the back foot, and you have to get something done by a certain reg date. And I think that undermines so much of the customer experience. So as basic as it may sound, that planning and the business buy into that planning is so important. The other point I would make is that long gone are the days where you had kind of the big banks, you had the fintechs, and they compete and don't dare share notes and work together. I think that the nature of some of the changes that our industry is going through is that partnership is absolutely critical now more than it ever has been. I think it's unrealistic to think that any entity can do it all themselves. So I think a huge part is savvy investments, savvy partnerships to really focus on areas of expertise.
As you say, very profound. And if anyone from our video production team is listening, if we could snip that first
soundbite.
2 seconds for socials, that would be lovely. That would be, that'd be wonderful. Alistair, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, nothing groundbreaking, beyond that groundbreaking piece to add. All I would say is that the projects that we have from a payments perspective are multiple, right? So if somebody came to me with a limited resource, there's always something else to get done. Again, as Divya said, starting with the why do we want to do this? There are pieces, obviously, as a listed business that we do move towards, quarter to quarter earnings calls, et cetera, et cetera. Are we optimizing for cost? Are we optimizing for revenue? So those things will come into play at a wider strategic perspective. Equally, as a global organization, we do look region on region as well. So if it is the case that, hey, we're trying to drive something here, then it may be, okay, well, we want to optimize for payment methods that potentially is going to be driving revenue, rather than looking at something like least cost routing around payments that will optimize for cost. So just to kind of think around that wider strategic kind of organization, what's the drive, what's the goal? But again, it's all about buy-in, right? You can sit there in your ivory tower thinking, this is the best thing since sliced bread. You go out to the wider business and, and you fall flat on your face. So that early kind of buy-in is absolutely critical, yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. We've mentioned customer experience a lot so far during this panel, so let's focus on that for a second. And Zeynep, I'll start with you. Customers have come to expect absolutely seamless processes. I know what I'm like. I'm trying to buy something online. You come across something that isn't seamless. You go into toddler mode and go, no, I'm going to do that later. I can't be bothered. It has to be good. How important is that customer experience in terms of customer retention and keeping people on board and using the platform?
Sure. Seamless payment experience is not a differentiator anymore. So it's the baseline expectation. So everybody wants to have an intuitive, seamless, easy, fast payment experience also across borders. So we made a survey recently, and we see that if there's a frustration at the point of checkout, we see 70% of abandonment rate. And this frustration doesn't even need to be something related to the payments. So just because their preferred payment method is not available at the checkout point, it creates abandonment. So in order to create retention, so a seamless payment experience is critical. And also, we are investing heavily on this space, obviously, because this is our core business. And maybe just to give an example of the innovation that we recently bring on is on the faster refunds, because we are always talking about purchases, but at the same time, there's also a refund piece of it. So faster refunds, so when you do a refund, usually it takes 2 to 3 days. And if it's a cross-border transaction, it's usually more than 2 to 3 days. So with faster refunds, we are providing real-time refunds, and it's mainly a good retention for luxury segment. And because, like, you know, especially when people are doing cross-border payments on the luxury segment, on luxury marketplaces or brands, they want to make sure that they have the refund option as well. And then we do provide it real time as Visa.
You see,
And
say,
it helps on the retention,
say you said luxury segment, Alistair activates.
What's ironic is I'm actually holding a Visa a Visa notepad, so it's not, you know, there's nothing there.
Well, let's save that for the partnership question. Johnny, if I can continue with you, your thoughts there.
Yeah, so similar themes really. I think trust is very, very easy to lose. And similarly, if a customer of a bank has 2 bad payment experiences, that's the trigger for them to start looking for other banks. So there is no margin for error. So you need to be absolutely brilliant at the basics because it's the minimum expectation. But I think the future is all about kind of the value-add services that you can layer on top of the payments experience. One of the things is that, you know, if you think about the cards experience, particularly when it's backed by a digital wallet, it's so slick, isn't it? You know, double click, beep, and you're done. It really is that easy. To compete with that is very difficult. So there has to be some way to differentiate. You know, the returns is a great example. We see things like a split bill proposition for a retail experience. I think it's these sorts of things that can drive real value to the customer. I think that the biggest challenge very often is getting them to use it for the first time, because I think customers will find a way that works for them and then stick very rigidly to that. Trying to broaden awareness to the range of payment options that are out there is one of the biggest challenges we face from an adoption standpoint, so that we can start to have a bit more competition.
I did get my mum to use contactless last year for the first time.
Well done.
That's an achievement, trust me. But really, is it 2 bad experiences and they're gone? Is it that brutal?
So I think the official statistic is 2/3 of customers will start to look at moving bank if they have 2 bad payment experiences.
Ouch.
So it's very, you know, you can build up trust with a customer over 20 years and lose it in a heartbeat. So it's, no room for error.
That's potentially quite stressful. Anyway, Alistair.
Yeah, probably a point to counter it a little bit, and this is purely just in the space that I'm operating at the minute. So as you can imagine, you do try and create those seamless experiences, but at the back end is not a chargeback or a dispute on just to pick on you, Divya, you know, a £15 taxi ride, but it's actually a chargeback or dispute on a £2,000 trench coat. So there's an element there where we as a business need to look at it, and we need to optimize for the customer experience, but also optimize for our own, you know, our own kind of P&L basically. So there are elements there where we will try and drive certain experiences where we see the risk higher to ourselves, and therefore we say, okay, we as a business need to add a little bit more friction into this journey. Yes, there will be a negative impact, but on the old, you know, volume and price type ratio of things, it's going to, you know, yes, we may lose a few sales, but it's actually going to protect us at the back end from the fraud, dispute, chargeback side of things. So I do agree with the panel that on those day-to-day customer experiences where you'll have an experience and it should take 2 to 3 seconds, if it takes 2 to 3 minutes, then that is incredibly frustrating. But in our type of world, there is something else to be thinking about where you've got AOVs that are, you know, into the hundreds, if not thousands of pounds.
I think that's a really important point as well, though, because sometimes customers want friction.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the assumption that payments should be frictionless is a bit dated and flawed. I think there's certain scenarios where the customer appreciates those guardrails to keep them safe ultimately.
Yeah, particularly on the digital side of things. So seamless when you're in store, you know that you're in a Burberry store. No one's created a fake store with all of this stuff in the middle of, you know, Bond Street or Regent Street, wherever it would be. But a digital storefront, yes, you can be semi-sure, but you're never, you know, 100%. And therefore, if you are transacting online at that high price point, then there is an element of that friction. So yeah, it's a valid point.
Yeah, it's when you get the call from the bank when you're putting a deposit down on a house or something, and they go, Mr. Perry, have you just spent this? Yes, I did. So sorry to call. No, actually, thank you. If I hadn't been doing this, I'm glad you did call. It's quite nice. Right, I've just got to include Divya. You haven't answered this one yet. Your thoughts?
I think similar to what the panel said, I think customer experience, good customer experience is quite critical to our business model, where there are multiple high volume, low value transactions taking place, and the customers want speed, they want reliability, they want to be operating on a safe platform. So in order to enable that, there's a lot of stuff that you need to do in the back end, but it's quite critical that you get the customer experience right. It's not just the front-end customer experience in the sense that the payments experience, it's also what happens later. So in case there's a customer issue, how do you handle that? And that is quite critical for us as well. We have lots of inbounds, not so much on payments, but more generally on the Uber, like I didn't get my taxi on time, all of those. But we have invested quite heavily in our community operations teams. We train them regularly, even from a payments, there's specific trainings on, from a compliance perspective, payments compliance perspective that is, imparted to these teams so that they are able to identify the complaints, etc., and then also, triage them, handle them appropriately. In the context of, talking about consumer duty, for example, that's a specific mandate from the regulator on payment services businesses to handle customers appropriately, provide them the right level of support. So all of those requirements feed into how we enable, our customer journey on the platform, both from a payment transaction level and also at the, at the customer contact level.
Thank you very much. I've got a feeling there's going to be plenty of questions from the audience, so I'm going to go to questions slightly earlier. Do we have anything from the room? I've got plenty more I'd want to talk about. I've really stuck my neck out here, haven't I? There isn't a single hand when I've gone that far. Thank you so much. You just get a feeling from the room there's going to be questions sometimes. You are officially my hero. Thank you so much.
So among all, thank you for your participation in this. I'm just concerned about the fact that we talk about getting better with technology and advancing. What about the part with the consumer protections? What are you guys doing to educate the consumer to prevent fraud, scams? Because as we see, as technology keeps growing, the scams are getting more and more tech, and people are getting scammed left and right. It's actually pretty sad. I just finished a conference last week, and it was heartbreaking to hear all the stories of people that being scammed. So I guess as members of this space, like, what are you guys doing to prevent people getting scammed?
I can have
Whoever wants to pick that up.
I think,
Yeah,
Right,
happy,
pick up for the banking side of things. Yeah.
Happy to lead off. So you're right. There's a fraud pandemic that we're living through at the moment. We've also got the trend towards instant payments, right? So in the UK, we've got faster payments. In SEPA, Eurozone, we've got instant. They're really attractive targets for fraud because it's fast and it's final and the money is gone. I think there has been some good progress from a regulation standpoint to try and protect customers. So you see things, for example, like verification of payee, confirmation of payee, where you're validating that the end recipient of the funds is who they say they are. But I don't think they go far enough. I think that anyone who is in the payments game needs a suite of tools to try and combat and work against fraud. I think in the UK as well, a lot of that responsibility is placed on the payment service provider. So as a bank, we take that extremely seriously because ultimately, not only because it's the right thing to do, but we're liable at the end of the day. So if a customer is deceived into making a payment to a bad actor, we are compelled by the regulation to reimburse the customer. And that can be really, really difficult because we've had examples where we'll intercept a payment in the channel and we'll say, we really don't think you should be making this payment. This isn't a good idea. And they still seek to proceed. They go into branch and we'll tell them in branch, we really don't think you should. We've sent police to people's houses to say, please do not make this payment. We're convinced it's fraud. But the customer quite rightly wants and has control. It is their decision. So huge amount of work to be done on customer education, but that will never close the gap. So I think it's about the other measures that banks and other players in the ecosystem can bring in to control it. What I would like to see is the broader ecosystem getting more involved. So a lot of scams, a lot of frauds starts life in social media, is carried over telecoms networks. I think there's a lot of other actors in the broader ecosystem that should be stepping up to do more.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to chip in on that, or should we take another one? Let's take another one. Anyone else? We have one at the front.
Hello. Thank you for the speaking. I have a question about the future. What about your thoughts about the next steps of the payments? Like example, I'm now learning a biometrical usage for the payments, like hand bio for the payments instead of the double click of the phone. What are the next steps? What do you think?
I can start if you want. So, the next steps, we do see recently a really big demand in stablecoins. I was at Sibos last week, and I think that we didn't have any panel or any discussion without talking about stablecoins. So it's an area that we are investing as Visa, and at Sibos we also announced that we are going to provide pre-funding pilot through Visa Direct. And the second one is the agentic commerce. So right now there's intelligent agents who are doing, searching on the web, understand our preferences and making decisions on behalf of us and negotiations on behalf of us as well. And we need to make sure that they are able to be paid and also to be able to pay and in a secure fashion. So these are the main two topics that we see as in the future. And obviously on top of other, many things that we are currently investing on.
Thank you. Anyone else want to pick that up on the short-term future?
I'd probably want to point to international payments. Zeynep, you'll have a focus on this as well, I would have thought. The customer sends an email to the other side of the world, it's there in seconds. Why isn't it the same for a payment? So solving that problem, I think, is the next frontier. For payments, I think all the technology is there, all the tooling is there, message standards are there. I think it's just a case of the industry picking a route to that interoperability so that we can have instant global payments. So I would predict that will be a massive focus for the industry over the next couple of years.
Yeah, can I add on this one? So this is, as you mentioned, this is my area because I'm on the money movement part of Visa, and we did invest heavily on this space, especially on peer-to-peer. We do see that there's a huge adaptation, but probably the headroom and the change we will see in the near future is on the SMB and later on the large corporates, B2B money flows internationally.
Yeah, on that point as well, I think we talked about it before in terms of, everything that a payment rail should be, let's call it. Is there trust? Is there security? Is there fraud mitigation? Is there an appropriate body? Obviously, there's a lot of talk now around decentralization, but on the stablecoin point, albeit that at Burberry, my role is kind of forward-facing B2C payments, particularly that B2B side of things with, stable coins for, you can imagine Burberry is a huge organization with a massive supply chain, and therefore we have hundreds and not thousands of those B2B payments that need to be made as well. So utilizing, stable coins, if, as an example for that, could be something, particularly cross-border payments, which are, expensive for us. So we'll try and bring costs down there as we're looking at total cost of payment acceptance. So I think at the minute it is in its infancy to the extent that stable coins are linked very largely, 80 to 90% of crypto flows either ramping up or ramping off. But moving forward, I think where it becomes more mainstream, that's, akin to what you were saying there, it kind of goes between SMBs, large corporates, and then just needs to be something that is available and there's ubiquity across it as well. So, you mentioned your mum there before, I think, Neil. If I talk to my mum about stablecoin, she, there's absolutely nothing there. But if you look back in history, 150 years when they were, producing greenbacks in the US and around, there wasn't money movement before. It all starts from somewhere, right? And then it just becomes normal. So, yeah.
Yes, my mum would be asking where the horse was. Divya, do you want to just chip in on the near future question?
I think I'd place my bets on, the emergence of payment super apps going in the near future. A bit like what India has done with the UPI, for example, or WeChat Pay. I think we are seeing some of that, similar movement, in UK and Europe of that as well. For example, Revolut doing, becoming some of that. Like you have banking, you have cards, you have payments, you have international transfers. So there are multiple capabilities being integrated into these super apps, and I think that is again serving the customer demand where they don't want to have multiple channels to, do all of their financial services or banking or payments activities. They want one-stop shop solutions, and I think that's what we'd see more and more of in the near future.
Yeah, can I add on this one? Like what Divya said is so true. And also on the peer-to-peer payment space, I just wanted to share a stats. We checked our data, and in 2025, we see that on the peer-to-peer segment, 70% of the money flow shifted from traditional banks to the neobanks, these fintech players. This is a huge shift, and we are expecting something to happen for SMB segment in the near future and for large corporate in the long run. And also, fintechs are already made their inroads to the SMB segment. So I think it's happening, yeah.
It is happening indeed. Well, we are up on time now, I'm afraid, but I've so enjoyed your company, so enjoyed this conversation. Can we say a huge thank you to Zeynep from Visa, Divya from Uber Payments, Alistair from Burberry, and Jonny from NatWest.
Thanks, guys. Cheers, mate.